All right, so get ready because today we are going deep into behavioral science, specifically how it applies to travel and transportation. You sent us this talk by Rory Sutherland, and wow, he really changes how you see the entire travel experience.
Yeah, and what I think is so interesting about Sutherland is he, he doesn't just point out that the travel industry is kind of obsessed with technology, which it is, but he goes deeper and looks at why that's actually a problem. Like why that focus on efficiency often misses the point when it comes to the traveler's emotional experience.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think we've all had those moments, right, where you are like battling with an outdated system or trying to figure out some rigid subscription model. And it just feels like it was designed for robots, not humans, kind of like those rail passes we've all struggled with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He uses those as a perfect example. He calls it the Vladimir Putin approach to life, which is you double down when a model fails instead of questioning the model itself. So what if, instead of just trying to tweak these outdated rail passes, we like completely reimagine the system? What if we took, a page from the Amazon Prime playbook and offered a travel subscription that actually adapts to people's, individual needs and behaviors?
Now, that's a subscription I would actually use. I mean, it's like the travel industry kind of forgets that they're dealing with, well, people. You know, people with emotions, people who sometimes make, what's the word? Irrational decisions.
Oh, yeah. He tells this great story about some British Airways executives, and they were just baffled by this idea that passengers weren't always rational. Like they were prioritizing the quality of the nuts they got on the flight over things like, leg room or flight times.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of nuts, I have a friend who refuses to fly a certain airline because of like one bad nut experience. Seriously, it's like talk about holding a grudge. But you know what? It does kind of make you realize that these little details, they can really like make or break a customer's perception of a brand.
It really shows that the emotional experience, it's just as important as the logistics. If companies want to create those loyal customers, they need to think about how they're making people feel, not just how quickly they can get them from point A to B.
So it's not just about speed and efficiency. It's about like crafting a journey that really resonates with us on an emotional level. And this kind of reminds me of something else that Sutherland talks about, time. He says that, it's not just about the minutes ticking by, it's about how we perceive that time, right? Things like boredom, uncertainty, our sense of control, all that kind of plays into it.
Absolutely, yeah. He brings up this pod parking system at Heathrow Airport. And get this, people are willing to pay more for a slower driverless pod experience, over just hopping on a bus. Why? Because it feels more enjoyable, more futuristic, and they know what to expect.
That's so interesting, yeah. It's kind of like when I choose live chat over a phone call, even if it might take a bit longer. It's that visual feedback, you can see the conversation progressing. It just makes me feel like more in control, even if it's not technically the fastest option. So what you're saying is a little bit of an efficiency, if it actually enhances the experience, can be a good thing.
Exactly. If it reduces our stress, gives us a sense of novelty, caters to our psychology, it can actually be a really smart move for companies. And this ties into another point Sutherland makes, the importance of, well, experimenting and kind of, challenging the status quo.
Yeah.
He has this really cool analogy about dilettante bees, those bees that...
Oh, okay, yeah. Tell me about these rebel bees.
Yeah. Okay, so most bees, they do this waggle dance to find the best pollen, right? But there's a small percentage that just like deviate from the path. And Sutherland calls these the dilettante bees. Now, they might seem inefficient, but they're actually super important to the hive's survival. They're out there exploring new areas, finding new sources of pollen that the other bees might miss.
Oh, so they're like the innovators of the bee world, not afraid to break from the norm, explore new things.
Exactly. And he argues that we as humans can benefit from a bit of that dilettante bee spirit, It's about finding that balance between, like, sticking with what works, but also being open to new possibilities, challenging those, established ways of doing things.
Makes you think, right? Where in my own life am I, being a little too obedient to the waggle dance? Where could a little more exploration lead to something really amazing? And I feel like this is especially important in the travel industry. It can feel a bit stuck sometimes.
For sure. I mean, it makes you wonder what kind of cool innovations we're missing out on by not embracing that dilettante bee, thinking a little more, right? Instead of just saying, okay, how can we make this existing system a little bit better? What if we just blew up the whole system and started fresh? What if we challenged all these assumptions that are holding the industry back?
Ooh, that's a powerful thought. And Sutherland gives some really great examples of companies that have done just that. He talks about Dyson, Red Bull, Uber. I mean, all these ideas that at first seemed kind of illogical, maybe even a little crazy.
But they were all based on this deep understanding of human psychology.
Right.
And that's what made them so successful. They weren't afraid to ask those what-if questions that everybody else was too afraid to ask.
It's like James Dyson. Remember when everybody laughed at him for his idea of this high-priced vacuum cleaner? I mean, who would have thought that people would pay hundreds of dollars for a vacuum cleaner?
But he saw something that other people didn't. There's this like hidden value in this really ordinary product.
It's about understanding the psychology of the consumer, right? And figuring out how to create solutions that meet those needs, even if they seem kind of counterintuitive at first.
It's almost like psychological arbitrage or something, like finding that sweet spot where you're satisfying a need that maybe people didn't even realize they had, like Starbucks. Did anybody really crave a $5 latte before Starbucks came along? But now it's just like a normal thing.
It's a great example. You know, a deep understanding of psychology can completely change an industry. Think about Uber. Before ride-sharing apps, hailing a cab was such a pain. But Uber didn't just make taxis more available, they changed the whole experience. Like that map that shows you exactly where your driver is, that's genius.
Oh, yeah, that map. That's brilliant. It's not about actually shortening the wait time. It's about reducing that anxiety of the unknown. It makes waiting feel more manageable because you have, like, information, you have a sense of control. Totally. It's a perfect example of how understanding the psychology of time can actually transform a negative experience into a positive one. Sutherland says that the quality of time matters more than the quantity. And here's another example, Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Their strategy is to discourage people from queuing up early for their flight by making the boarding location kind of ambiguous.
Oh, I like that. So instead of herding everybody into a line like cattle, they just like let people relax, enjoy their time before they have to board. It's like the difference between waiting for a delicious meal at a restaurant, the anticipation makes the wait enjoyable, versus waiting in line at the DMV where like every minute just feels like an eternity.
Totally. It's a total reframing of that waiting experience. And this leads to another big point that Sutherland brings up. Challenging these like conventional ways of thinking, especially when it comes to pricing, and revenue management and travel.
Yeah, this is where it gets really practical, right? Especially if you're working in the travel industry. He says that we're way too reliant on price as the only way to get customers to do what we want them to do.
Right, like discounts are the only answer. But he suggests we explore these other incentives, things that tap into those deeper psychological motivations.
So things like loyalty programs, making people feel valued, appreciated, or maybe highlighting less crowded flights, appealing to our desire for comfort and space.
Exactly. Price matters, of course, but it's not the only thing driving our decisions. Often there are these, underlying psychological needs, and if we can understand those and address them, we can come up with more effective and more sustainable strategies.
So it's not just about slashing prices, it's about using psychology to actually make your offering more appealing. That's such a good takeaway for anyone in the travel world. And Sutherland, he actually gives us a framework for understanding those deeper motivations. He talks about 5 key psychological factors that, often get overlooked in these like traditional business models.
He calls them status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And they all apply, I think, to how we think about and experience travel.
That's a perfect way to lead into the next part of our deep dive. But before we do that, I want to pose a question to our listener. Think about your own recent travel experiences, okay? Which of these 5 factors, status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness, which one of those really stood out for you? In a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, because thinking about our own experiences through this lens can give us these like incredible insights into what really shapes our travel choices. And it can help us make better decisions in the future.
It's funny. Sutherland makes this point about how even small time savings, they can really have a big impact on our like well-being, especially when it comes to things like our daily commute.
Yeah. He says that reducing travel time for people who have to commute every day, that actually has a way bigger impact than, making a slightly faster journey for someone who only travels occasionally. Right. Exactly. It makes sense when you think about it. If you're commuting every single day, even shaving off, like just a few minutes, that can make a huge difference in your life.
Right.
Less stress, more time for other stuff. Maybe it even influences where you choose to live.
It's like the difference between finding a shortcut on your daily route versus taking a slightly faster highway on a road trip. One feels like a real improvement to your, everyday life. The other is just a blip on a longer journey.
Yeah, totally. And this whole time saving thing, it ties into another interesting point that Sutherland makes. He talks about how the pandemic really shifted
Yeah.
how we think about video conferencing.
Mhm.
Before 2020, it was seen as this like kind of a poor substitute for in-person meetings.
It was like the diet soda of business communication, not the
Yeah.
real thing, you know?
Exactly. But then, well, the pandemic happened,
Yeah.
and we were all forced to embrace video conferencing. And now, I mean, it's become so standard for so many businesses.
Yeah, for sure. It's like it's gone from diet soda to regular Coke. And
Uh,
I don't see us going back.
I don't either. I mean, video conferencing, it's so convenient, it's flexible, and, often it's a lot more sustainable, more cost-effective for businesses.
Yeah. But I do sometimes wonder if we lose something when we rely too heavily on virtual interactions. Like, there's something about those serendipitous encounters that happen when you actually travel for a meeting or a conference. Those, hallway conversations or chance meetings, they can lead to all sorts of, new ideas and collaborations.
That's a great point. And, I don't think in-person interactions are going away completely. There's still a need for, face-to-face meetings, especially when you're trying to build those relationships or when you're dealing with complex issues that require that, like more nuanced understanding.
So maybe the future of business travel is more about like finding that balance, right? Using video conferencing for, routine things and saving travel for those times when that in-person interaction is really valuable.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart way to look at it. It's not about replacing one with the other. It's about using each tool, strategically.
This reminds me of something else Sutherland talks about. The two ways to create value in the marketplace. You can either figure out what people want and then, find a clever way to make it,
Yeah.
or you can figure out what you can make and then find a clever way to make people want it.
He calls that psychological arbitrage. Finding that hidden value where other people don't see it. He uses Nespresso as a great example. They packaged coffee into these, single-serve pods, created this sleek machine, and boom, they changed how we think about and value coffee.
It's like they invented a whole new category of like luxury coffee,
Yeah.
and people are happy to pay a premium for it.
And it's not even that they made the coffee itself better. It's that they created this whole experience. It
Yeah.
appeals to our desire for, convenience, maybe a little bit of status, and even a touch of indulgence.
It's kind of like what Dyson did with vacuum cleaners, right? They took this like boring appliance and turned it into this like high-tech status symbol. It's okay to spend like hundreds of dollars on a vacuum cleaner now.
It's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Using psychological insights to create a whole new market for like an everyday product.
This makes me think that innovation isn't always about making things better. Sometimes it's about making them, different, about changing how we see things, appealing to those deeper needs that maybe we don't even realize we have.
And that's where, creativity comes in. And a willingness to experiment. Sutherland, he encourages us to embrace those seemingly illogical ideas, to challenge those conventional approaches. He even suggests some pretty out there things, like installing electric car charging points in people's homes before they even own an electric car. The idea is that if you've already made that investment in the infrastructure, you're more likely to actually buy the car.
Ah, interesting. So it's about creating a commitment, even if it seems a bit backwards. It's about understanding how people make decisions and then using that to nudge them towards certain behaviors.
Exactly. And this ties into another important point he makes. We need to think beyond price as the main driver of behavior change.
Yeah. We're just so used to thinking in terms of, discounts and promotions. But there are so many other ways to influence people's choices.
Sutherland talks about, using loyalty programs, highlighting those less crowded flights, even framing information in a way that plays on our psychological biases.
Like using, what's it called? Loss aversion. Emphasizing what people might lose instead of what they might gain to encourage them to book that flight or upgrade their seat.
Right. It's about being creative, being strategic in how we design choices and present information. He says that even little tweaks, like just changing, how pricing info is laid out on an airline website, that can have a big impact on on consumer behavior.
It's amazing how much psychology goes into, marketing and product design, especially in travel.
Totally. And it's not about manipulating people. It's about, understanding how our minds work and then using that knowledge to create these more effective, more satisfying experiences.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, but I feel like we need to come back to those five key psychological factors that Sutherland talks about: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. He argues that these factors, they get left out of, these traditional economic models, but they're actually super important for understanding what really drives us, what motivates us.
Yeah, you're totally right. We touched on these briefly, but let's dive a bit deeper into how these play out in the travel experience.
Okay. Let's start with status. It's that desire to feel, important, respected, admired. How does that show up in the travel world?
Well, think about people who choose to like fly first class or stay in those luxury hotels. It's not always just about the, extra comfort or the fancy amenities. It's about signaling a certain level of social standing, about being seen as, successful, sophisticated.
It's like those exclusive airport lounges,
Yeah,
where you can relax in this quiet, luxurious space
right.
away from all the chaos of the main terminal. It's not just about the free snacks and drinks. It's about feeling like you belong to this special club, like you've earned some kind of privilege.
And this desire for status, it doesn't always have to be about, showing off your wealth. Sometimes it's more subtle, like having priority boarding or personalized services that make you feel valued and recognized.
Like being greeted by name at a hotel, or having a dedicated concierge to, handle all your travel arrangements. It's that feeling that you're more than just a number, that your needs actually matter.
Exactly. And those little gestures, they can have a huge impact on how satisfied we are, how loyal we are to a brand. It's about feeling like you're part of this exclusive group, like you're being treated as an individual.
Okay, so status is about feeling important, respected. What about certainty? How does our need for predictability and control, how does that shape our travel experiences?
Well, travel is full of uncertainties, right? Delayed flights, lost luggage, crazy weather. And these things can create so much stress, especially for people who really need that control, that predictability.
Oh, yeah. I'm definitely one of those people. I hate feeling like I'm at the mercy of, events I can't control.
And that's why things like, real-time flight updates, clear baggage instructions, and, responsive customer service, all that is so important. It gives travelers that sense of confidence, that sense of control, even when things go wrong.
It's like that Uber map example we were talking about. Knowing exactly where your driver is and how long it'll take them to get to you, it takes away some of the stress of the unknown. You have a sense of agency, even if the wait itself isn't any shorter.
Exactly. It's about managing expectations, about, providing that predictability, even in situations where things are inherently uncertain.
Okay. So status is about feeling important. Certainty is about feeling in control. What about autonomy? How does our need for freedom and choice, how does that play out in the travel experience?
Well, think about the rise of, personalized travel. You can use apps, websites to create your own itineraries based on, your interest, your budget, how you like to travel. It gives travelers that power to control their journey instead of just being, herded around on some prepackaged tour.
It's about having the flexibility to choose your own adventures, set your own pace, discover those hidden gems off the beaten path.
Yeah, exactly. And that desire for autonomy, it applies to everything, from choosing your seat on a plane to deciding how you want to spend your time at your destination.
I think this is especially important for younger travelers. They're more independent, more adventurous. They don't want to be told what to do. They want to create their own unique experiences.
It's about feeling like you're in the driver's seat, right? Not just along for the ride.
Okay, so we've got status, certainty, and autonomy. Now, what about relatedness? How does our need for, connection and belonging, how does that factor into our travel choices?
Well, travel can be a great way to connect with others, right? Whether it's traveling with friends and family or joining a group tour or even just interacting with, friendly locals at your destination.
Yeah, and I think this is a big reason why, social media has become such a huge part of travel. People love sharing their pictures and videos and stories. It's a way to connect with others, build a sense of community around their experiences.
It's also a great way to discover new places, get recommendations from people you trust. It's like having like a global network of travel agents right at your fingertips.
Yeah, and it's not just about those online connections. There's something really special about those face-to-face interactions you have when you travel.
Yeah,
Those moments of shared laughter or wonder, or discovery. They create these lasting memories.
for sure. Travel can be such a powerful way to strengthen those bonds with people we already know, but also, to make new connections. It's about creating these shared experiences that bring people together.
Okay, so we've talked about status, certainty, autonomy, and relatedness. That leaves us with fairness. How does our need for just an equitable treatment, how does that fit into our travel experiences?
Hmm. Think about things like transparent pricing policies, clear cancellation terms, responsive customer service that actually addresses concerns fairly. These things create a sense of trust between the travel provider and the
So
traveler.
does that feeling like you're getting what you paid for, that you're not being taken advantage of, and knowing that if something goes wrong, the company will, make it right.
And in the age of online reviews, fairness is more important than ever. If people feel like they've been treated unfairly, they're going to tell everyone about it, and that can really hurt a company's reputation.
So it's in everyone's best interest to create a system that feels fair, right? It's not just about being ethical; it's also good business.
That's a great point. Fairness isn't just about following the rules. It's about creating a system that feels just and equitable to everyone.
It's about respecting people's time, their money, and their overall well-being. And I think that's a perfect note to end on as we move into the final part of our deep dive into Rory Sutherland's amazing insights.
I agree. These 5 psychological factors, they give us this like powerful new way to look at travel, both as, consumers and as providers.
So, we've been talking about all these ideas from Rory Sutherland, and it's amazing how he really pushes us to think outside the box, to question all those assumptions that can sometimes stifle innovation.
Yeah, he makes this point about how, we can get so caught up in solving the problems that are right in front of us, and we miss those opportunities to come up with completely new solutions. It's like we're so focused on the what is that we forget to ask what if.
Yeah, and he uses that analogy of the dilettante bees, right? Those bees that don't just follow the crowd; they go off, explore new areas, and sometimes they stumble onto these amazing discoveries. They're like the embodiment of innovation.
Exactly. They remind us that sometimes the best ideas, the most groundbreaking ones, they come from those unexpected detours, those moments of serendipity. It's about embracing that spirit of exploration and not being afraid to challenge the status quo.
So how can we apply this whole dilettante bee thinking to the travel industry? What kind of what if questions could lead to some real game-changing innovation?
Hmm. Well, what if, instead of just trying to make flying a little less awful, we could completely reimagine the airport experience? What if airports became like destinations themselves,
Right.
full of, unique experiences, amenities that people actually enjoyed?
Ooh, I love that. So instead of being this place that we have to endure, it becomes a place that we actually look forward to going to. What if hotels offered these hyper personalized experiences that went beyond just choosing your pillow type? What if they used, data and AI to actually create a custom itinerary for you, tailored to your interests, your travel style?
Those are such great examples. It's about, shifting our thinking from just making small improvements to really rethinking things from the ground up. And Sutherland gives us some great examples of companies that have done this really well. He talks about, Dyson, Red Bull, Uber. None of those ideas made sense at first, but they tapped into something deeper, something psychological.
They understood that innovation isn't always about, being logical. It's about understanding what people want, what motivates them. It's about creating value where other people didn't even see it. And they weren't afraid to ask those what if questions that everyone else thought were crazy.
Right, and that's what makes them so different. They were the dilettante bees of their industries, going out into the unknown and finding those new possibilities.
Thinking about those companies, it makes me wonder what other dilettante bee ideas are out there just waiting to be discovered. What solutions to problems we haven't even thought of yet are hidden in plain sight?
Maybe there's a way to make business travel not just, bearable, but actually enjoyable and productive. Or maybe there's some new technology that could completely eliminate the stress of lost luggage. or a service that connects travelers with, authentic local experiences seamlessly.
It's pretty exciting to think about, right? That the future of travel is like full of possibilities, and all we need to do is ask the right questions and tap into that dilettante bee spirit a little bit.
I think that's one of the most important takeaways from Sutherland's talk. This call to action, right? To be more curious, to experiment more, and to really challenge those assumptions that hold us back as individuals and as an industry.
To embrace the dilettante bee in all of us and see where it takes us.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Rory Sutherland's amazing insights on behavioral science and travel. We hope you've enjoyed the journey. Yeah, we encourage you to keep thinking about these ideas and see how you can apply them to your own travels. And maybe even, spark a little dilettante bee thinking in your own life.
Remember, the best journeys, the most rewarding ones, are often the ones that, take us off the beaten path, the ones that challenge us to see the world in new ways.
Until next time, safe travels, everyone.